Hi, I'm Devoki and this is Okie Dokie Boki, and today I'm going to be hopping on the bandwagon and I am going to do the Booktube Real Talk tag. Was I tagged to do this? No, but I mean, the joy of tags is you can just decide to do them. I've just been kind of burnt out from like some surprise work that I had, and I had actually filmed this originally 2 weeks ago, but I messed up a setting on my camera. That's a lot of words to say that this tag was created by Alyssa J, and I've seen basically a bajillion people do it, so I might be on the tail end of that, you know, the trend, but maybe not, we'll see. But anyways, let's just get started. Question 1, what's something nobody told you about Booktube before you started? That YouTube is a thing that I would end up putting on my resume. I mean, when I started out on Booktube, I started for the most part because of the fact that I just wanted to learn how to make a video. Like YouTube seemed fun and I just kind of wanted to do it. And you know, even though I knew that I was sort of thinking about switching from research to something in science communication, there is no way that you could have like told me that being on YouTube is something that I would like admit to people. And like when I was first applying for jobs, I was like, why would I talk about YouTube? My channel is super small. My videos for the most part have had a pretty low production value. Like there's no way that any employer would watch them and be like, hey, you know, this seems like a girl we should hire. But I think the thing that I didn't really fully understand is just the fact that YouTube is a skill, and being on it, even as someone who is having a smaller channel, has taught me things that have helped me kind of, you know, in other job arenas. In terms of things that actually, you know, people might have known and could have told me, but that I did not know until a few months ago after like more than 2 years on Booktube, is that there's a guru gossiper thread about it. Like, I don't know how I just didn't know this, because like I've spent quite a bit of time on like, you know, the beauty guru chatter subreddit, which is like a cesspool. I've been on like Gomi, also a cesspool. I've been on Blog Snark, which is maybe like a step up from a cesspool. I've spent my time on these kinds of forums. Guru gossiper for me has always been one of the ones where I'm like, no, there's no way I'm going there. Like, it sounds even worse than all of those other places I mentioned. So I was just like completely taken aback when I found out that there's a guru gossiper thread about Booktube. I was like, you know, what is there even to talk about? But I guess it turns out that there's drama, which I should not be so excited by. Like, I don't like drama, but I'm also a nosy bitch, so I've definitely been in that thread and like scanned through it. I don't have any strong opinions either way on those threads. Like I've said, I've been on my share of those types of forums. I'm not really a poster. I think that they have both their merits. Like I think there is value to those threads, but they might be outweighed by the incredible entitlement that is exhibited on places like Beauty Guru Chatter and other kind of forums like that. I could get into a whole thing about that, but whatever. The point is that there's a booktuber thread on Guru Gossiper. I learned about this somehow very late, and that's probably for the best, because it might have interfered with my ability to actually start a channel. I might have kind of overestimated the value of a lot of the ideas on the Guru Gossiper thread, when really, you know, YouTube is, for all of us, just a subjective thing. Question 2, what is your opinion on typical Booktube videos, wrap-ups, TBRs, hauls, etc.? I think if you have watched my channel for a while, or if you even just like look at the list of videos that I've made recently, you can probably get a sense for my take on, you know, those typical Booktube videos. I've never posted a haul or a TBR. Actually, that's not completely true. I have technically done a haul, because I did at the end of 2017 make a video that was like all of the books I had bought that year. And that video was related to the actual video I made once about like my thoughts on hauls in general, but which was really more navel-gazing about why anti-hauls, which are popular in the beauty community, don't necessarily translate over to Booktube. But anyways, my reasons for not liking book hauls are, you know, pretty much the standard ones. For me, especially as someone who doesn't buy books that often, you know, my hauls would be pretty boring, and I also just don't find them super interesting. I don't do TBRs for actually kind of a similar reason. Part of it is actually that TBRs I kind of find stressful. Committing to a stack of books out loud is a really good way to ensure that I'm never gonna read them. And similar to hauls, I just don't really watch TBRs that much. I think the Booktube videos that I tend to be most drawn to are discussion videos and reviews, and neither hauls nor TBRs are great for that. And now that I've been in Booktube for longer, I've come to kind of understand why hauls and TBRs are so popular. I kind of think of them as like the Booktube equivalent of small talk. Like when you're meeting someone, you don't always jump into the super deep stuff right away. You might, talk about the weather. I think TBRs and hauls are the Booktube equivalent of talking about the weather. They might not be super deep and insightful, but they're kind of like a superficial way to get to know somebody and get to know whether or not you want to keep talking to them. In terms of typical Booktube videos that I do reviews, and I have done wrap-ups. I think I used to do monthly wrap-ups, but the one challenge that I find is that whenever I go into a wrap-up video, I'm always like, oh, this is great. I love wrap-ups because you can talk about a bunch of books that you might not want to go super in depth on, combine them all at once. And whenever I go in to film them, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be so fast, so easy. Here's a stack of books that I have like maybe 2 or 3 thoughts on each, like no problem. And then it's like 40 minutes later and I'm still talking and I usually hate myself. And then I have to edit it and I'm like, oh crap, there's so many books in this that I have to like edit through. So they just kind of, for me, got a little time consuming to make in terms of like the payoff for how much I actually enjoy making them. So I tend to do them a little bit more intermittently now. Instead of doing monthly wrap-ups, I tend to kind of maybe wrap up like a chunk of reading from like a few months, like some of the books that have stood the test of time in terms of things I want to talk about. The other thing that I love wrap-ups for are for my recent romance reading rundowns. There are romance books that I'll do full reviews on, but especially if I'm binging a lot of one author, I might not necessarily want to review every single book in a series, for example, but I might want to, group them all together with a bunch of other romances. Question 3, what is an assumption you had about Booktube before you joined? Was it proven to be correct or no? So when I joined Booktube, I hadn't really watched that many Booktube videos up until that point. Like I was really, really new to the community and also just starting my channel at the same time. But coming into it, a lot of the YouTube videos that I liked kind of came from the YouTube film criticism side. So channels like Lindsay Ellis and Folding Ideas, who do a lot of video essay, discussion-y, analytical type things about media. So that's what I kind of assumed Booktube was. I thought it was going to be basically a lot of video essays about books, like an English essay, but like now as a YouTube community. And as for whether or not that has been proven correct, I mean, yes and no. I think there's so many different parts of Booktube, and obviously YA Booktube is the chunk that ends up defining all of us. It's like this giant force that shapes what we describe as typical Booktube videos. And if you go by that, I was pretty wrong. There are definitely a lot of discussion type videos, but those discussion videos tend to be, I guess, about more books in general, about people's reading experiences of books, and I like that. I think that's super interesting, and it's something that I didn't expect from coming into Booktube that has surprised me and like has taught me like new ideas about how I kind of assess my own reading. But in terms of that sort of like analytical, like critical reading of books, I think that's not super common. There are definitely people who will read books critically for reviews, but I think the great thing is that the more you make those certain types of videos, the easier it is to find creators who are also making similar types of videos. So like Jen Campbell has her fairy tale videos. I really like the way that the Poptimist structures his reviews so that they're often not just reviews, they're kind of placed against a bigger context that leads you to a bigger question about the books. I'm trying to do more of those kinds of videos because they're like what I like making the most, like doing my nonfiction, fact-checking and nonfiction, doing this reading Speak in the Age of Kavanaugh. Those videos for me have been the most satisfying to make because they are the most, for me, just like they help me process a lot of what I'm thinking, and I'm always looking for more people who make those kinds of things. So let me know if you have some personal favorites. Question 4, what is something you've done that has actually helped you grow your audience? Look, I've been on Booktube for 2 years. We're gonna play the comparison game. There are people who came in at the same time whose channels are way bigger. There's people who came after whose channels are even more way bigger. And there are people whose channels are also smaller. I think in general, word of mouth ends up probably being for a lot of people the most powerful thing that comes to growing your audience. That's something I've heard, not just on YouTube, but like when people are talking about podcasts and stuff, like what people say gets them, the largest increase in their following is word of mouth. And I think for me, and a lot of like similar channels that maybe are not doing typical YouTube videos that make them discoverable to a larger audience, that word of mouth can probably be disproportionately even more useful. I think I'm using all my adjectives and adverbs wrong right now, but whatever. All I'm trying to say is that I've been really fortunate to have shout outs from channels of varying sizes that have who have varying audiences that have helped me grow my audience over time. And I think based on how I've seen my channel described, that what's ended up being helpful in that regard is having brought in my science background, particularly through my Not My Thesis series, where I was talking about my experiences finishing up my PhD program in biomedical engineering, and as well as kind of like other videos that have been related to that science stuff. I wasn't sure when I started it if that would be a good idea. I think the general wisdom is that like if you have different types of content, you want to keep them on their own platforms or in their own separate corners, because you want your audience to know what to expect from you. And I think that totally makes sense. There's probably people who have come to my channel from Booktube and been like, what the fuck is this other stuff? I'm not interested. Or people who have wanted to watch like the grad school stuff and then have seen this other content and been like, well, that's not what I'm interested in. And so I get why the common wisdom is the common wisdom in terms of keeping those things in separate corners. But I'm also glad I didn't, because I think it's helped me be more creative with how I tie those things together. And it's helped me establish a more specific point of view. I think it's been interesting looking at the videos that do the best on my channel. Some of them are the Not My Thesis videos and some of them are book reviews. I think what that for me has confirmed is that if you do things in a way that feels true to you, you'll be okay. I don't know. There isn't really necessarily one way to do YouTube. There is a common wisdom and then there's what's right for you. And this has been what's right for me. I'm glad I did things this way. Another really good way to build your audience though is to film a review about Bad Blood by John Carreyrou right before an HBO documentary about Elizabeth Holmes comes out, because like shit dude. Question 5, what is a common mistake you see new booktubers making, or one that you made? I've said this before on my channel and I still stand by it. When you're first starting, like unless you really know what you want to be doing with your channel, there's definitely an advantage to growing slowly. And you know, maybe the reason I cling to that advice is because like I'm almost 3 years in and my channel is still small, so I'm just like, you know, I'm growing slowly. But I don't know, I think if your main goal is to make things that you're happy with, like it can help to take your time in building your audience, because it gives you more room to like figure out what is right for you in terms of like your personal boundaries, in terms of what you're interested in making. Whereas if you grow too quickly, you suddenly might have this audience that you feel like you owe something to. The other advice I have, and this is the worst advice, actually a surfing instructor gave me this advice once and I wanted to punch him. I was about to get on the water and he was like, are you an overthinker? And I was like, yes. He's like, don't overthink it. And I was like, that is the worst thing you could tell an overthinker, right? Like that is the worst. But it's also true. I don't have advice on how to not overthink it, because I am definitely an overthinker. So I'm just gonna say don't overthink it and leave the rest of that hellish landscape of overthinking to you to sort through. Question 6, what are your thoughts on working with publishers and sponsorships? I have no problems with booktubers working with publishers or getting sponsorships. I know there's always gonna be some kind of tension, but like, when that happens, I get why not everyone would be super excited about it. I mean, like again, coming out of like beauty YouTube world, like it's seeing how sponsorships has affected the way that audiences view beauty YouTubers. I think it'll be interesting to see if there are similar things for booktubers. I just want to make sure that people are doing it in as honest of a way as possible, but outside of that, like, I don't know, get paid. Question 7, do you think booktube is dying? I mean, no, I don't think so. I hope not. I think what's weird for some people, I don't know if this is where this question in particular is coming from, but something I've noticed is I think a lot of us, when we start booktube, there's almost like an initial class of booktubers that you feel like you're starting with. Like I remember the booktubers who started at around a similar time as me, and not all of those people are still on booktube anymore, which is unfortunate because I really loved all of their channels, but I also completely understand it. When I first started booktube, and I think this is true for a lot of people, you get kind of like an initial rush rush of creativity and of creating in general, where like it was very easy, even though I was super busy with grad school and stuff, for me to make videos and post relatively frequently. I think there's a period of time where I might have been posting even maybe up to 3 videos a week, whereas now there's definitely more of a gap between my posting, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Part of it is just like my own life getting busier. Part of that is having been on Booktube for longer and kind of reaching maybe like a little bit of a less motivated phase. Not now, I think now I'm more motivated again. I have a lot more ideas, but there were a few months where I was just so burnt out from grad school that I think that translated into me being burnt out with Booktube. And I think like people underestimate how much time it takes, like, and it boggles my mind. Again, I mentioned being like on Beauty Guru Chatter and like the cesspool that is, but people will talk about making YouTube videos like it's just you whip out a camera and you're automatically on YouTube, like that there's no time put into it. But there is. Like, obviously it varies for people. Some people are able to make their videos very quickly. Some people are able to produce really high quality videos really quickly, but you know, not everyone is able to. Sometimes you want to script things, so that might take some time. You might be doing a video that requires more research. You might be doing a video that requires more editing. On top of that, you know, the basic act of finding a time to film can be challenging. If you're working most of the day, filming at night can be hard. If you also have roommates or family, or, you know, you're looking for natural lighting. Like, it's not trivial to make a video, and I think it's just that when you start out, you're so excited that it's easier to work through those things, and that over time they start to build up and they get harder. Bree Hill, who I'm sure a lot of you know from YouTube, she actually just wrote a post on her blog about why she left Booktube, and I think some of these factors are kind of related to what she wrote about. So I'm going to link to her post down below. I think sometimes it just gets tiring. And so I don't know if that's really an answer to this question, and maybe it's just something I wanted to say overall. But I don't think Booktube is dying. I mean, I hope not. Like, I'm still doing it. So thank you guys for watching this, and yeah, I will be back with more stuff soon, hopefully more frequently. We will see. Now that I've said it out loud, this is going to be like a TBR where I'm going to say things out loud and then they're not gonna happen. Anyway, thank you guys for watching, and yeah, bye!